I'm Miriam Joy and welcome to my studio. Today we're going to be doing the Mardi Gras class, and the reason I called it a Mardi Gras is it looks like a party to me. So we're going to have a party and show you how we create this beautiful gourd. I shoot my classes in sections just to make them easier for you, so you know when to stop and complete a certain area and then continue on, instead of doing the whole class and then you try to go and do your project and you can't remember where to start. So we're going to start today with a bottle gourd, and we want to find a bottle gourd that's got quite a bit of a neck to it. I don't want too fat of a bottom, but I want some that I can bring it up higher, that's not too short of a top as well. And then what we'll do is we'll take our tool, and if you need one of these, they have these at the canning store, and we're going to turn our gourd, keeping it flat on the bottom, all the way around. And that is where we're going to cut our gourd and clean out the inside. And once you've got it cut and clean, we're going to take our black spray paint, and I use the flat, and I picked mine up at Walmart. It's like the 98-cent, and I just spray the inside till I get it nice and dark. Don't try to overspray on the edges. If you do, clean it off with your Mr. Clean and Magic eraser, and that'll come really clean. But we want one with a nice neck that we can go ahead and continue doing. So go ahead and get that done, and then we'll go to our next spot. What I kind of did is decided where I want my front to be, because I've got a kind of a quirky little top on this one. And what we're going to do is we're going to drill our hole for our reed. Now on the neck, I'm using a colored reed, and it is a 2mm reed, and we'll get into a little bit more about the reed. But what I did is I lined up a drill bit and found one about the same size or just a tad bit bigger, and we want to drill into our neck of our gourd, and I'm going to drill higher and then I'm going to build it lower because I want that reed to show. So we want to do that a little bit, and that's why we kind of need a longer neck. Like this guy was perfect with his neck. It didn't go up and down very much, so it was really good. So we're going to go ahead and put that in. Now I'm going to go ahead and see if this fits, if this is a big enough fit, and it is. It just fits right in there, so that's perfect. And then I'm going to go ahead and put how tall I want this to be. Now remember, we want to leave some of it for the wax. We don't want it all the way up. Oops, that was not a smart thing to do. And those I put in my front because I'm going to cover them up with my flowers so you can't see where they're at. So go ahead and drill your holes into your gourd, and then we'll get started coloring it. Okay, we're going to dye our gourd, and I'm going to use leather dyes today. So I'm going to start out by, when I do leather dyes, I always dampen my gourd first. And I don't want it wet, I just want it dampened. And that just evens everything out so that you can apply a nice, even coat. And so we're just going to go ahead and go all the way around it. And you can do it with a paper towel. Make sure you have your rim marks marked away here so they don't get underneath that and stay. So once we've got that all done, we're going to use an English tan, a leather dye, light brown, anything to just kind of emphasize the natural color of the gourd. And I like English tan. It's one of my favorite ones. And I always use a tray when I'm using my leather dye, because if it happens to spill, then you've got it under control. And I'm using makeup rounds, and I always start at the bottom of my gourd in case the color isn't right or something happened to it. Then you can still rescue your gourd. Or if you think it's too dark or something like that, you can move on. So I'm just doing circular motions all the way around. Get in this neck here. And then we got to make sure that we got the top up here. See, this guy's got a little bit of a green tone going on here. So if you didn't like that color, you could switch at that time. So let's get that dry. So I want you to go ahead and do that part, and we'll come back for our next color. Our next color is going to be our jet black, or our black, and I just put it right on there, and I fold my cotton around in half, and then I'm just going to bring that down. Now I want you to think about the gourd. If you had a really big gourd, then do a third. I'm going to do about half of this guy. I want you to think about not coming more than about 4 inches at the most with the wax, because if much more than that, we can't really control it. And you can see I'm just feathering it off at the ends, just kind of picking it up. The color is solid. This gives us a base to work on. Now watch your gourd. If it kind of is bigger on one side, kind of bring it down on that one side and even it so it's all the way around nice and even. And you also can come in, if you want to, just tip those off a little bit and just kind of whisk those out a little bit more. But what we're doing is building up our base for our crayons or our wax. If you want it darker, you can go over it again. Just get that nice and dark there. And then I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to come up and we're going to do the top. Now remember, we got to let some of this show through, so we don't want to do the whole thing. This guy is a little bit longer here, so I'm going to keep this area the same length. And we're going to get in that neck really well. And I got one more little section to do over here. And then by the time that dries, you'll be ready to go straight into your wax. Go ahead and get your wax plugged in, start to get your pots warmed up. We're going to do those a color at a time, so if you only have 1 or 2 pots, that's not a big deal. And I'm going to actually start with metallic color first and show you the reasoning behind that. But we're done with our black, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of our gloves here and get ready to go. In this gourd, I used 7 different colors, and I'm going to be using those colors today, but I'm also going to show a metallic color just so you can kind of understand. But we have different color variations that you can also do. You don't have to do just those. On this one, I did my bottom, instead of black, with a dark purple, and then I did like Purple Mountain Majesty and a fuchsia and a metallic green and a forest green and any colors to kind of match my yarn up there. And I just wrapped my yarn around and sewed it on, and I found that yarn at Walmart. So there's all kinds of options you can do with it. Don't get just stuck doing one color. But I'm going to start with a metallic color just so I can show you how the metallic color works. And I'm going to be using, this is the silver, and it's the metallic silver, so it's sonic silver. A regular silver does not have the metallic in it. It doesn't have those little silvery flecks in it. It's a little bit different, so we want that silver fleck. So we're going to go ahead and put that into our melting pot. And I'm not going to give you the usual spiel about the melting pot and all the do's and don'ts. There's just a few that I'm going to give you this time, because it's so different of a class. I am going to tell you to put your tool into your melting pot, and I will have my husband zoom in on this yellow right here, and right there is almost too full. You'll start to drip, especially because we're going to work with our largest tool. So we want to just take a tiny bit of cotton and just remove that down, just so it's right there. Now if that continues to drip a little bit more, then just move a little bit more of that crayon. But that's the only two things I'm really gonna try to get you to make sure that you follow the rules on. I'm going to be using the number 2 tool, the largest end, because we want to get as much wax as possible, because when we go to melt these, the colors fan out and they start to lose how brilliant of a color they are. So it's real important to get them on in large amounts of wax. So we're going to start with the silver or the metallic and put that all the way around, and we'll talk again about why we're using the metallic first. Trying to finish getting my piece warmed up here. So we're going to go all the way to the bottom, bring the tool straight out and set it down on the board and just pull that off. You don't have to worry about being perfect on this. If you do a drop, as long as it is on the black and not the rest of the gourd, leave it. There is no right or wrong. Now I'm going to do this in like 3 different levels here. No right or wrong, so I've got one lower, one higher, and one in the middle, and that is just to kind of get that silver spread around. But remember, we've got still 7 more colors to put on this gourd, so we've got to allow room for them. Now see, I dropped with that, and sometimes the metallic will drop a little bit more, and we're using a larger end of a tool that contains more wax. When you pick your tool up, don't rush over, because a lot of times that will cause it to drip. So just kind of gently bring it over and apply it to your gourd. Now another thing we've got to watch, if you're working like I am and your wax happens to be on the back, you don't want to start scratching it. It's not as important because we haven't melted it yet, but that's where our stabilizer comes in, and I'll pull that out on our next little time here. Now I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to do some up here. Now remember, from this hole to this hole, that is going to get covered up with reed, so that is not going to show as much. So we don't have to quite worry about that area as much. So go ahead, if you want to put a metallic color on, then go ahead and put it on just about the way I did, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do with the metallic. We thought it would be a good idea to kind of explain the wax a little bit, since we're not going to go into a lot of the other part that we normally do. Just so you know, there's a great YouTube link, and when you hit on my Miriam Joy YouTubes, the first one that pops up is how to do the wax technique, how to use the tools, how to do all of that. It's about a 20-minute video, and it's got some great information in it. It's really good to know. The number one thing that we always do is we only use Crayola crayon. It does make a difference. It's brighter, it's thicker, it's just a lot more pigment into the crayon. Each color is going to work a little bit different. Most of the colors I'm using today, the dandelion, the turquoise, the red, the purple, and I'm going to use purple and white together, carnation, pink, orange, and yellow, green are in the 24 box. The sonic silver that we used is in the metallics or in a larger box of crayons, so it is not in those, just so you kind of know. Also, the tools that I am using are designed for me. We have them manufactured just for this process, just so you know. They are a special tool, and you can find them on our website at miriamjoy.com if you're not familiar with the tools. So jump on over there and check out more of those, and check out that video. It's also a really good thing to have and know. Now on to our metallic. The reason we did the metallic first is the metallic takes longer to melt than a regular crayon because it's got some different particles in it. So we're going to melt it just a little bit to get ahead of the other colors, and make sure I got my heat gun plugged in. And we're just going to kind of get it at the point where it's melted, and we're going to stop. Now, I'm not turning my gourd too much. I'm kind of leaving it in place. This is the only time we're going to melt before we put the rest of the colors on. And when we're melting, I don't like to get it past the black crayon. And I'll have a fan here cooling it off as well, because your gourd keeps getting warmer and warmer and warmer. And if you don't want it coming down that far, just simply wipe it off. But I'm going to get a fan out too when I start to melt the other colors, so that we can cool it as we're melting it. Otherwise, they just continue to warm up if you keep going and don't kind of let it set there for a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this all the way around, and then we're going to start with our next color. I melted all of those, and then I also melted the ones at the top, and then I'm going to start with my next color. My next color is going to be Dandelion, and I love Dandelion. I'm not a yellow person, but it really makes everything pop, so I use Dandelion quite a bit. It is a little bit thicker than the yellows, but it is going to be one of the thinner colors that you're using today. So remember, still we are using that large end. You just see how I went with that dot there. And your yellow can drip a little bit more than your other colors. So remember how we showed you to remove. I'm going to put some more on that guy. You can't mess this up. You cannot mess this up. I had to remove some of the wax if you needed to remove some of that wax. This is one of my most popular, newer classes that I've done. People just said it was so much fun. They really, really enjoyed this class. I think it's just because there is no stress level, and like I said, you cannot mess it up. So, sometimes this area doesn't get as much wax in here, so if you also need to come back and put a little bit more up here, and think about that as well, because remember, up into that hole right there, between there and there, you're not going to have anything, or it won't show. We've got to leave the room for all the other colors that we've got coming. So we want to make sure that we do that. And the silver, we just wanted to kind of, it's not so much a color. When you're using metallic, don't think about it adding color, but adding sparkle to it. So go ahead and get that color done, and then come on back and we'll start our next color. My next color is a turquoise, and you can make the turquoise with the blue, green, and white 50-50, or you can, in a bigger box, they have turquoise colors or robin's egg, and I really like the blue. So either way is fine to get that turquoise kind of color. If you decided you wanted to go with a regular blue, add some white to it. It is too dark. Look at the tip of the crayon, because that's the color it's going to be, not what you color out on a piece of paper. So it's real important to kind of know that. Again, we want to leave room for more colors to come in between all of these guys, and don't forget we want to put some up there as well. And you can see how fast this is going to go. This isn't going to take long. You can do this when a friend's over and talk to a friend or anything like that. Just make sure you're getting them at all levels, and then turn it around. If you pull the color towards you, It is so much easier than trying to push it away from you. And go ahead and finish up that turquoise color, and we'll get started on our next color. I went and got my stabilizer, and I flipped it upside down because this is a little bit bigger or smaller gourd, so you can use it both ways. So now we have switched over to red, and we're going to walk this color around and put that all over here, and just start going. We're about halfway through our colors. Don't forget to do that bottom part down there. I also wanted to tell you, you can switch. If you only had one pot, when you're done with the color, just take your cotton ball and clean it out. Take half of a cotton ball, take your tool, put it inside, and clean that out. And there is a video on how to clean a melting pot, and I also go over it in that one on the first YouTube video on my YouTube site. But if you need to know how to clean that, but you can do this with just one melting pot. So we're going to flip this guy over. We're going to do some red up on top here, and then once we've finished our red, we're going to go to our next color. On my next color, I used purple with just a little sliver of white, about that much white, and you can get it to the color you like it. If you think it's not light enough, then just add a little bit more white to it. But if you don't add the white to it, your purple will almost appear black. So we want to make sure that we get that purple lightened up before we use it here. And you can see I'm not worried about making these strokes perfect or anything like that. You've seen drops that I have used and just have gone with the drop. Just make sure you don't have two sections and not one here in the middle, that you're kind of hitting that with the other colors that we're using. And you could do, like I talked about earlier, make a class or gourd, excuse me, with just 4 colors, 3 colors, just whatever you wanted to do there. Just take what you've learned and create something new with that. And that can be so much fun, putting your own spin on it. I always really encourage you to think what you can create with what I have taught you. So we've got that purple. So we're going to come over to the other side, and we're going to start to put some color up there. And we're starting to fill it in pretty good here. Okay, we're going to get ready for our next color. Our next color is going to be Carnation Pink. I'm going to bring some brightness into this. It is one color that I've noticed when I've got the 24 packs is not always exactly the same shade. And unless you're doing a bigger gourd and using less colors, you should be using only about 2/3 of the crayon at most. But if you're doing that and your well starts to get low and your strokes start to get small, then you need to just add some more crayon to make those thicker and nicer strokes again. And I seem to be really dripping here, and I will tell you why. I've got a fan going on in the background and it's hitting. So that's one thing to think about. If you've got a fan that you're working with and you start to drip, that can be one of the reasons. So it's a good thing to know and to be aware of. And if it's wintertime, if you've got the heater on top of you or something like that, you need to be aware of that. So I'm going to hit some of these little ones up there. Make sure we get some in that area that we want to make sure, that zone that we talked about that we may miss. And then we're going to do up on top. Just going to look for some of these darker spots that we may not have color in yet. You may be up above them and you can stop when you get to that other color. And I'm going to go ahead and finish the rim, and we're going to start our next color. Our next color is going to be yellow-green, and it is a thinner color, kind of like the yellow that we talked about. And the difference between yellow-green and green-yellow, and it took me about 4 years to figure this out, is whatever the color ends with is the color that is the main color. So if you have yellow-green, it is a green. If you have green-yellow, that is a yellow-based color. So kind of know that. And we're starting to get real pretty here. We've got one more color left after this, so I'm kind of looking at spots, making sure I have kind of all the holes filled up, top and bottom. Don't forget that you still want to do some up on the bottom and the middle and everything as well. I'm going to do some right there, some up there. We're just going to go ahead and continue all the way around, and then I'm also going to do the rim, and then we will go to our next color. Our last color that we're going to be using today is orange, and I noticed that I did something. I'm going to try and encourage you to make sure that you don't do the same thing as I did. Switch from the bigger end back to that smaller end. So kind of watch yourself when you're changing colors to make sure that you do not do that. You want to stay with the largest tool to get the largest amount of wax. And we're just going to try to finish all of these in here. Any open areas or like there where it's separated, kind of bring them together with the orange, or up here where there's black by itself. We're just going to kind of finish bringing in. You can go back to your other colors if you feel it. You don't have too much of an area and you still need another color in it, then just go back to that color. That's okay. We did have some classes and some people did put white in theirs, and on some instances it looked good, and some others I just didn't quite like it. But if you do white, just do a little bit. Don't do too much. And your black leather dye on this is just kind of your filler color, so you have a background color. But like that purple gourd I showed you, you could do a different color if you had a different colors that you wanted to do of your crayon to make a different colored gourd. So just know that there's so many possibilities out there. I had people that did more of certain colors because they wanted to emphasize that color as well. So that was something that you also could do. And I almost need to bring some more wax into there. I'm starting to get lighter, but I think I'm almost at the end here. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish it up on the rim with my orange, and make sure you don't have any holes that are really big that you need to go ahead and fill in. And then we're going to go ahead and start melting all of it together. I want to talk to you a little bit about melting it before we get to the gourd. On this one, I melted him and I didn't turn him as much when he is drying. On this guy, while I melted him, like if I want him to go this way, I'm going to blow my heat tool that direction, and then when it gets there, I'm going to cool him off. Now you really have to be careful because it can take off on you. You're heating here, you're not watching what's going on here, so it's real important to just heat a little bit at a time. And I always try to tell my students that we're only working with a little bit at a time. That's why we didn't want it much longer than that, or we're going to heat it about that farther, because when you start to heat all those colors together, they can come out really gray if you're not careful. And I like to do it standing up, and I've got my little fan with me here, and I'm going to turn it on. And so when it gets to a point where I'm going to dry it, I'm going to move it in front of the fan to dry it, and we'll try to be able to show you that as well so that you can see that. So I'm going to start, and I decided I'm turning the colors and running them that way, and I'm not going to turn this one too much this time, and we'll show you a little bit of both. Let's go ahead and heat this area up. Now, if I have it straight up and down, it's going to run down more. So we want to be real careful with that. And we want to make sure that we kind of get all of our colors blended in. Now I'm going to cool that off because that's about where I want that to be. And I turn that down instead of holding it up. And those colors ran past my black. So be careful with that. But you can see how they're starting to melt now. So I'm going to go ahead and do the next section. Now see how this guy is really taken off right here already? He's really warm, and that's what I was talking about. If you're not watching, they're just going to keep on going and going. So we've got to be aware of what they're doing. Got that right where I want it, so I'm going to stop and cool that off. The worst you can do is not like it, then heat it up and take it all off. Wipe it off with a paper towel. We want the bubbles at the end not to be there. We want them melted down in. So that's kind of important that we get those guys all melted down. We'll continue to cool that off and work our way around here. Now you can see that silver really starting to pop, and you can tell you, like I told you, it's not really a color, it is a shine or a glitter. And if you're working, like see this guy right here, he does not have much crayon there. So you can come in and you can still add crayon to that. So we're going to go ahead to our next section. And continue around. Did the same thing again there, not quite watching those tips. Turn that up just a little bit for them to not go towards the bottom. And if you pick that up, you might just want to make that nice and smooth. And we'll continue to cool those down. But you can see how I've tried to take it pretty well even, and we're still getting more curve. Now if you really want them to go more, just angle them more. See the difference there? We really got those guys really moving on that section. But you don't want to continue heating them because then you're going to get into gray colors if you have them all get together. I'm doing a lot more of this type heating the wax twice, and I'm calling it kind of a twice melted color or technique, I should say. So I'm just going to go ahead and play with this a little bit, and I'm not moving it too much around because I want to kind of keep my color. See how bright that is there? I want to kind of keep that color, and I'm going to go ahead and finish all the way around, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the top as well. I've switched it over to the top part now, and I kind of changed the way I'm holding it. So we're moving this part down. Remember to keep this as level as possible if you don't want it to move very much, and to dry that. And you'll see this part really will kind of, the wax will melt in there. Now remember, that's going to get covered up. But the biggest thing is not to overheat it, and only do a little bit at a time. The more you heat it, the more your colors are going to dull and run away from you and not be as bright and as pretty. So if that's the one thing I can emphasize, is not overheating it. Then we've got that one turned more. Isn't that really pretty? So you can turn it more than I did on this one. Like I showed you, just kind of move it and blow the air, but you don't want to have it run probably then about that much at a time, because then you'll start to lose your colors. You'll start to get a grayish kind of effect. And you also can come back in these areas and put your wax over them. That is fine as well. But then we have this real kind of party in a box. You could do this in also 4th of July colors. Wouldn't that be really funny to kind of do a 4th of July one as well? So that'd be a lot of fun. So just think about that. Go ahead and finish that up, and we're going to talk about how to varnish them. To varnish our gourd, we want to have something that works really well with plastic, because the crayon is similar to a plastic. Triple thick spray on by crayon is really, really good. You could use that. Or I use also the Rust-Oleum, the 2x the coverage, and get that really nice and ready to go on. The only thing is they take a little bit longer to dry. Another thing that you can do, and it will help protect your wax more, is you could spray it with a regular gloss, the Crayon 10-minute dry or something like that, and then you could come back and we could do these parts with our 3D crystal lacquer. And what you'll do is just pour this into a bottle and brush this on, and I would only brush it on to the black, and you're going to get this real high shine like this guy. Now how you keep from getting these brush marks is you don't go back over it, and you keep them nice and short on that, and just cover that area there, and when you come back around just stop, but don't overwork it. Just get it on and let it kind of relax. It's better to have a little bit too much in your brush than not enough. Now that our gourd is completely dry, and you don't want them tacky or anything like that, we're going to go ahead and use our bigger reed, and this is a 2mm reed, the color reed, and I'm going to dip it and start to get it wet. I'm not going to immerse the whole thing, and what happens when you immerse the whole thing is the colors start to not get as bright. And then what I've done once it's wet is I'm really making that end pliable. And the reason we're going to make that impliable is we're going to stick it into the holes. Now, if your holes have covered up with the wax, then just take something and pry them open. So we're going to put that in there. And see how this isn't right up next to here, it's out a little bit. We've got to kind of do our first one out a little bit, whatever size that first hole is, and then we're going to start wrapping it inside of the next one. And that's why a flatter one is so much nicer. It's easier to work with. I think I have mine out a little bit too much here. Let's try this again. There we go. It's a little bit, I had a little bit too loose. Okay. But you can see how I'm doing that. And like I said, if you have a flatter neck in the middle, that's why it's so much easier to use that flatter neck. Now my dyed reeds I get from Susie Noom, and she goes to a lot of the gourd festivals, and I pick mine up usually at Cherokee from her. She's even had some, when she's done some classes in Arizona, she's left her leftovers. And you can dye your own reed, and it would be kind of the same process I use, and I'm putting a video up how to dye raffia, different things. But if you're doing a multicolor one like this, and you're not doing a whole bunch, it's cheaper to buy it than it is to make it. So that is the reason that I like to just purchase it from somebody. It's already nice and done. I will also put up the information for the country seat, which is in Pennsylvania, where you can purchase dyed reeds and they will mail it to you over the internet. So we do have some options on that. And I've got to pull this guy just a little bit tighter here. And it would have been more helpful if I would have moved that hole up just a little bit more when I was doing him, making him a little bit tighter. And I want you to see that it's okay. I probably could have made that one work, but I do want to get a little bit tighter. But I want you to see that it doesn't always work out for me either. So what's throwing me off here is I've got one side that's a little bit tighter, one side that's a little bit looser here. So I'm going to pull this a little bit tighter. Continue to work on here. And sometimes if you have a person that can help you hold the first one down as well. My gold's lopsided, and that's the problem I'm having with him. And you want to make sure the amount of reed this neck part is going to depend on how wide or spaces you put the holes apart. So that's really going to kind of be an individual thing. So I can't tell you you're going to need however many feet of this. But once you get it up on that neck, you start going the other direction. It's going to be a lot easier. And I think I need about one more. I think this next one we're going to be able to tuck it into the hole. What we'll do, where'd it go here? I lost where it started. We'll look for that guy. Okay, it's right there. So one more here. And we may even do one more, because see that hole? We're not quite to him, and I just broke my reed. And we'll see if we can make that work. I have to bring my scissors with me. So what we're going to do, and if I have to back this up a little bit, that's okay. I'll just take it one row down. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to take the end of this reed, and we're going to make it really pliable. And I like to go about 2, probably 3 inches past the reed to do this and kind of bend that again. Because if you don't put the water and make it bendable, it's going to break on it, just like you saw me do with it. So we're going to get that in here. And I may have to go and grab my scissors to get it straight in, but there it goes. We're going to stick that right in there, and we're just going to make that nice and tight. I did lose some of that because I was bringing that up here. just make that tighter, stick that in a little bit more. You also can pull it from the inside if you have enough pull. That's why we leave it longer. And just get that in nice and tight. And that is how we do the neck reed. And then you also can put some hot glue on the insides if you want to cut those down a little bit more, or you can leave them, it's up to you, but I try to put some hot glue right on the holes, and sometimes you get into that bottom one's a little bit tricky. I kind of have to put it in and let it drop. So go ahead and finish that, and then we'll do our flower. There was one thing I forgot to tell you to do when we do the black, and for some reason I usually forget this part. I'm breaking a cardboard rim. I'm not using my tray. I'm just going to dip the black, and I'm just going to come around the rim and just clean that up. That does make a difference. You could do that with black acrylic paint if you didn't want to do that with your leather dye. And then we're ready to go ahead and show you how to do the flower. To make the flowers, I'm going to show you how to create the base to make them. And I took a 2-inch circle, and you can use the Miriam Joy craft templates and cut it out, but I had a person suggest to me something so much easier. And we need to make sure, first of all, this is really thick corrugated cardboard. It has to have the holes in between it. It has to be really thick. And what they did is they took a 2-inch circle drill bit and they put it on the drill and just sawed right through the cardboard. And it's really easy and really fast that way. But if not, you can do that by hand. But once you cut those out, you take your hot glue and you glue in all of these corrugated areas all the way around until we get this nicely covered, because we have to have a spot for the pins to go in and not come undone. So we're going to do this all the way around. If you wanted bigger flowers, you could do a bigger circle, but I wouldn't go much smaller, because then it's really going to start to get hard to do with the reed. Now for this part, I used a 0.0 or a 0.0 reed because it is just easier. Once we've got the circle done, we're going to put our pins in. And these are the long quilting pins. I put this one in, and then I put this one straight across from it. Then I put this one, and then I put the one straight across from it. I tried to get them as even as possible, and I did 6 pins, because you need the room for them to hold on. That's why you need that kind instead of just a regular straight pin. It works so much easier than a regular straight pin does. So we have those in. Now again, remember I talked about not dipping it quite as much in the soaking the reeds. We're just going to kind of dip this real quick and get the water kind of out, and then we're going to bend the area that we're working with. Now this needs to be 4 feet long to make a flower. So whatever you have 4 feet long will make a flower. And we're going to start to curve that just like we did the other part. I'm going to use sinew to put my flower together, and I'm going to do at least a 3 feet. That may be way too long here. You can use thread if you don't have sinew, but the sinew works really well because it's waxy and it will grab tighter and hold easier. So our first one is going to be, we've turned that pretty good. You can use the bigger part for the reed, the number 2 reed, but learn how to do it on a smaller, and then it's easier because you have to really bend the large. I used a long needle that would go all the way across this circle, and I'm going underneath this first loop, and I'm going to, I thought I cut it here. Yeah, I did. To the left. And I'll show you that again in just a minute. And we're going to leave a tail that is 6 inches long. And I'm going to go under it one more time. And this first one may be easier if you have a little helper that can help you and don't get stuck on the pins. So we've got that in there, and we're going to put a double knot in this part. So we're going to tie it once, and we're going to tie it twice. Okay? So now we started here with our end, and we went up and around, and we're going to come down here, and we're going to make sure that this guy can bend around the corner. Now if you break it and it bends, that's okay, just use it. And the more you practice these, the easier they're going to get. So we have a top and a bottom right now. I also do have a YouTube video on this. If you were working on your gourd and didn't want to go through the whole video again, I gotta read in here. This is the funnest part of the whole video, hardest part I should say, is trying to stay out of the pins and the reed. So we're going to go around this guy once, make sure we're not picking up any of the pins, and twice. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie it off again. Doesn't matter how, there is no right or wrong, just tie it off. And you don't have to do a double knot anymore, you can do one knot. So we came up here was our last one. So we're continuing, working our way around to the left. So I rub that guy again, make sure he's wet and not dried out. So we went from the top, and see, we don't cross over, we go from the top to the bottom and then back up. So now we've got those two in place. And I'm doing this all in one section, and if you need to stop, just stop and do the movement, or what I just did with the petals as we're making them, and then play the next section. So I'm not going to break this up like I would the others. We'll just keep on going. But stop your computer as you're making it. Now, we were down here last. So this was our top one. So we're coming up to the left. It should be your only open pin again. And when I am sewing these, all I'm making sure, there is no right or wrong, but I'm making sure that we're getting these last two guys. So it doesn't really matter where I'm going in or coming out at, as long as I'm picking up these last two guys. And I've got way too much sinew. I could have probably done 2 feet and been more than enough. So just know that, and then tie it. Now we've got one level, and if you wanted just one little flower, you could do just one little flower. That's okay. But we're going to go ahead and make him double flower. So we've come there, so we're going to come up to the next one. So this was our last one. So we're going to come here. This will be our next one. Now on these, we're going to make these a little bit taller. So those are going to come out a little bit more from the ones that we started with. And again, we're going to come under I tried, when I first started designing this, I tried different things besides the cardboard and tried to piece them together, and this was about the best I could get. It was soft enough, but yet it didn't melt away when I got it wet as well. So there is some method to my madness. And we're going to tie that off again. So we've done, this is our last one at the bottom. If you always hold that last one at the bottom, then know you're going to go to the top, to the left, to the left, to the left. So we're going to hold him there. Like I said, getting these guys out of your way is the hardest part. So wider and wider. And practice these. Don't be frustrated with your first one. They get much easier, as my students would tell you. Each time you do them, they get much easier. So sit down and do 2 or 3 of these. You're going to be surprised. And we can put 2 or 3 on the gourd. I've got one. I think I've got 3 flowers on. And I gave my students that option. If they wanted them around the rim, they could put them around the rim. They didn't have to settle for one. So we should have 1 left. And you know you're doing it right if you come up exactly the same. If you don't, nobody's going to know. Just do it. Just do it. So we're making those a little bit bigger. I always say 90% of being an artist is doing it, because most people want to and they don't. They don't get around to it. So just be proud of yourself for accomplishing something or trying to do it. And that is our last one there. And I found one that I wrapped up, and I'll show you what we'll do with him in just a minute here. So try and keep him off those cardboard things. I'm going to go ahead and cut this tail just a little bit longer right now. And I did not get him covered up. I did not catch him. So we're going to do it one more time and catch that tail. So 1, 2. And again, I caught that needle, so I'm just going to take that needle out because that's the last time we needed him. And if you had one like that, that's okay. I'm going to tie this guy off in a double knot so that we've got him nice and tight. And then I'm going to take this guy that we picked up, if you end up doing one like him, and tying him in there as well. So we've got it all nice and secure. Once you've got these secure, we're going to glue. Make sure we've got all those tips down. We'll go ahead and cut that off now. And then I'm going to start to remove the pins. And you only have to remove 4 of the 6 pins. The last 2 you should be able to leave in there. And just bring those over the top of them. And there is your little flower. So we're going to go ahead and make sure we've got all the tails cut. And make sure you have all the tails glued. And I really like this flower. I've used them on a lot of different projects. Don't think just gourds. Think about craft fun. Now that we've got him glued, we can go and shorten these tails up a bit. And I don't want these tails to show when I put my stone on them. And you can pick whatever stone you have or what kind of accents your gourd. I like the pink. Let's see if the purple is kind of dull. So I think I want to kind of go with the pink. And I'm going to put him there. But we've got to go ahead and get our tentacles curled up. So we're going to stop there, let you do the flower. And like I said, just go back and do that step by step and stop it as you're working, and then come back and we're going to show you how to do the tentacles. I'm going to take my leftover pieces now to make my tentacles, or you may want to pick what colors they are and use those. That's totally up to you. So I'm going to just briefly wet these. You could curl them up and just stick them in if you wanted to. We don't want to leave them long enough to have them bleed into each other, but just to get them wet. And then I'm going to do like I did before. I'm going to make them pliable. Just start working with them pliable. And I've got some bigger reed and I've got some smaller reed. It doesn't matter. Just whatever you have left over. And I'm going to be using a 7/16 rod there, and you could use whatever size you wanted. That's what size I like to use. You could use a little bit smaller if you want to go smaller. You could use bigger if you wanted bigger ones. That's okay. And I'm using electrical tape because electrical tape will stick with water. And I'm going to put them all on at one time. And I don't always necessarily worry about my ends being as perfect because I usually will just trim them off. But if you wanted them to be really perfect, then just bend them a little bit more before you put them around your stick. I probably have way too much tape here for the top. So we'll start there. And if you'd rather tape them on at one at a time, then tape them on one at a time. There is no right or wrong. This is just kind of how I do it. You may find a better way that works better for you. And we're going to get those on nice and tight so they don't come off. Now, once we've got those on, then the tighter you want them, the tentacles, the tighter you wrap them. I also like, and I should have been plying there a little bit more, I broke that guy. I also like to do some loopy ones, and I think that's really fun too, to have them more whimsical and a little bit looser. So this first guy already ended up here, so we're going to go ahead and tape him down up there and just continue wrapping our other two pieces, but you've got to make sure that's nice and tight so that it doesn't run away on you. And then I'm going to bend these a little bit, make them a little bit more pliable. We're just going to continue going up the reed. And I'm breaking some rules, and I've got a fan going, which is not helping me either. And put them all the way on up. And then you're just going to go ahead and tie it off again with your electrical tape. And it may not look pretty, but that's okay. And then we're going to let those dry, and they don't take very long to dry. You can set them outside. You can set them in the fan. You could even pull out your heat gun again and just set those, and they'll be dry, probably 10 minutes at the most. So go ahead and get those dried up, and then we're going to put them on our flower and put our flower on our gourd. Okay, once these are dry, we're just going to really pull them right off the reed. That's not really hard at all. If you were going to do a rim, I'll talk you through that, but I almost decided that I liked it better without the rim. But here is an example of a rim and more than one flower and how cute that is. You would wrap a few of those up together at one time and just kind of figure out how much you'll need to go around. So we need just right about there. My holes are drilled 1/2 inch apart, probably 1/4 of an inch down. And then I just tie my embossing, not my embossing thread, my, I'll think of it in a minute, we'll keep going, that you coil with. The thread that you coil with, so you have a nice bright color, and I tie it, and you just go around and tie it in between each loop so that it looks just like that. It's not going to be perfect because you're kind of going to the side, so the tighter these are, the better they are, because you'll be coming in between each one of those and just sew them all the way around, and that's how you do the rim, and don't make it harder than that. You also could just hot glue those on too if you wanted to. Now if you wanted just the curlicues, we're just going to pull these guys apart, and you're going to decide which color or which part that you want to use on them, and we're going to go ahead and get that done. And I'm just like those guys, and I like the way those guys come out to a point. That's okay with me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put them onto, and this guy's kind of cute too, and we talked about having some loops. Here's a loop down here. Show you what that kind of looks, and maybe we'll want to kind of do something with that instead too. That's kind of a loop-de-loo thing there. We'll see what we think about that guy when we get going. So we're going to glue these on. Now when we did, our bigger loop should be in our back of our flower, and if you kind of look, the front, it will kind of curl up towards the front, so that's how you know if you've got the front or the back. So we're going to start, and Mod Podge has these new finger caps out so you don't burn yourself. They come in a package like that with 3 of them in it, and that is really a nice thing to have so you don't stick your fingers in and burn them, because you used to say it wasn't a good day unless I got burned by a glue gun. So those are really new fun item that's coming out. So think about laying this part down and it coming out more this direction. So we're going to do that guy. And that's our little loop. So let's look at this guy. And we've talked about having the front part come out. I may have to figure out which little part I want on my finger. And we want to kind of figure out the flattest part of this, so I'll lay that there. And we may have to look at this a little bit when we get this onto our gourd as well. I'm going to go ahead and put my stone on. And any of those ends that show, trim those so they go away. And if you need to glue some tentacles on afterwards, you also can do that. And I'm going to try and put this puppy on. And I've got 3 tentacles on him, and I'll probably do another one or so. This guy's coming up the top here. Let's get him down. And I'm going to use this guy. See if I can do it while I'm waiting for that guy to set up, because we're using the hot glue so we have more workable time. So don't forget that it's gonna, and I broke them as I was putting them on. Oh well. Nope. So let's do one like that. So there is no right or wrong, it's what is pleasing to you. And I'll again show you the one with all the flowers on it. So you can kind of decide if you like more than one flower or what you like. So you can have lots of fun with it. Try to keep as much of this glue out of there as possible. So we've got that guy going up there. Okay. And I take my scissors and I kind of clean the glue up just a little bit to get it all nice and neat so we don't have any of those glue things showing. But again, let's show you the one with the multiple flowers. And if you're putting on 2, if you set one up higher and one down lower, that's really nice. But if you wanted to kind of
you know, do them across the gourds. And I put like one, see this guy is kind of a fat one like I was talking about. Isn't that kind of cute? The fat as well as a little bit up there. We've got him, he's kind of fat as well. So there's all kinds of fun things you can do with it. You'll just start to see all the possibilities. So really just play with it and think of lots of things that you can do with that. So we're going to go ahead and finish your gourd up, and let's get cleaned up and we'll finish talking about our last bits.
Thank you so much for joining my class today, and I hope you had a lot of fun. I just see so many possibilities with this, and I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you ever have any questions about anything that we've done or any of the videos, please email me at art@miriamjoy.com. And of course, you know that you can find any of our products on our website at miriamjoy.com. Thank you so much. God bless.